everyone, David here, and welcome to part 2 of my picks and predictions for this year's Academy Awards 2015. I believe this is like 86th or 87th. I think it's 87th. I'm pretty confident it was the 87th Academy Awards. But anyways, here I am with the second installment in what I perceive to be a 3-part series where I pick out my picks and predictions for this year's Oscars. Meaning, I pick whoever I would want them to win, and then I predict who I think is going to win based on how the Academy chooses their winners. So without further ado, let's go ahead and tackle the next few categories in this series. I'm going to go ahead and just put on my glasses here so that I can read and look at things accordingly. Also, if you haven't already noticed, I changed my tie because, God, putting on a bow tie is such a bitch! I don't even know why I bought that thing. But yeah, bow ties. You know, if you don't have the patience for them, don't even bother putting one on. I'm just going to use a necktie from here on out. Anyways, my next category, or the first category for this installment, will be Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role. Supporting. Sorry about that. Anyways, the nominees are Patricia Arquette for Boyhood, Emma Stone for Birdman, Keira Knightley for The Imitation Game, Meryl Streep for Into the Woods, and Laura Dern for Wild. Okay, so here's the deal. I think I should point out a disclaimer here. Out of all these nominees, there's only one that I actually did not see. I didn't see the movie that she was in, and that's Meryl Streep for Into the Woods. Didn't see that movie. I had the opportunity, but I kind of lagged on it, so unfortunately I can't comment on her performance. I can only comment on these 4 other performances, which I did see. Now, this one is somewhat tricky, even though it's a little easier than other categories that I'm probably going to tackle in the near future. First of all, there's 2 nominees in here who, despite giving great performances, I didn't feel anything really Oscar-worthy when I finished watching the movie that they were in. And that's Keira Knightley and Laura Dern. I didn't think that they delivered enough for me personally to go, wow, that was just breathtaking. So they're automatically out. My pick will have to go to Emma Stone for Birdman, because not only is she my wife, she just doesn't know it yet, but but also because her character really resonated with me, especially during her few scenes where she did have that holy shit moment. She did have her scenes where she just stole the show and she just nailed it. Especially that one scene where she's talking to Michael Keaton and she's saying how irrelevant he is and how people strive to be relevant every single day, yet they can't because the world's just so vast. Yet the internet managed to make it so small that things are just moving so quickly that you'll just be a drop of water in an endless stream. I know that's like a lyric from a song somewhere. I don't even know I know that it's a song from somewhere, but it can't be any more true, because that's the way technology works these days, and that's something that Michael Keaton's character was striving for. But Emma Stone's character is that voice of reason, and that's what made her scenes much more powerful, and those scenes wouldn't have been as powerful if it wasn't for Emma Stone's performance. So she is my pick. Who do I think the Oscar is going to go to, however, is Patricia Arquette for Boyhood, because not only does the Academy favor these kind of characters, these kind of struggling mothers who go through an awful lot of hurdles to try to provide for her family or that kind of thing, which is that criteria that any middle-aged woman needs to meet when it comes to accepting a role if they want to go for an Oscar. Because I'm not even joking, both Patricia Arquette and Laura Dern are practically playing the exact same character in both of those movies. They just have more, one just has more screen time than the other, because that's another thing that kind of detached me from Laura Dern's performance, was the fact that she's barely in that movie that she's in, Wild. She's barely in the movie. I was expecting her to be much more of a driving force, and she was to an extent, but I think she even had less screen time than Anthony Hopkins did in Silence of the Lambs. I think she's only in the movie for like 10 minutes total. But Patricia Arquette is definitely the favorite right now. She's been winning everything. She's the front runner. And I wouldn't mind at all, because she would be, in some ways, my runner-up, because I really did appreciate her performance on that movie, especially seeing her transform herself, considering she was there from the beginning of the production for that movie to the end, all 12 years of it. Next up is Best Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role. The nominees are J.K. Simmons for Whiplash, Edward Norton for Birdman, Ethan Hawke for Boyhood, Mark Ruffalo for Foxcatcher, and Robert Duvall for The Judge. Now, much like with the Supporting Actress category, there's one particular nominee whose movie I did not see, and that was Robert Duvall for The Judge. I did not see The Judge, and much like with Into the Woods, I had an opportunity, but I missed out on it, so I can't comment on his performance. I'm sure it was great, but this is probably the easiest category that I'm going to tackle, because it's a shoo-in, okay? Not only is he my pick for the Oscars, but it's also the Academy. Chances are they're gonna go with him. He's got it in. He's got it in an ace in the hole. There's no way that he's not gonna be able to win. It's made. And that's, of course, J.K. Simmons for Whiplash. Don't get me wrong, everybody else gave great performances, especially Edward Norton between the remaining three that I can comment on. I think Edward Norton would have to be my second pick, but let's just face it, J.K. Simmons delivered a powerhouse, an electric performance. I mean, I hate to use very movie critic words here that they usually put up on posters and stuff like that, but it really does pertain to his performance. I really do mean it when it comes to his performance in this movie. Every time he's on screen, he steals it. He steals it, and in my opinion, the definition of a supporting acting category or a supporting acting winner would be someone who, whenever they're on screen, not only do they support the story and support the main characters, but they also manage to steal the show. They're the one that you're like, wow, you were cast in a supporting role, and yet you stood out from the best of them, and I have to give it to J.K. Simmons. I mean, no shade towards Mark Ruffalo, who was also pretty good, and Ethan Hawke, who was very likable in his role, and like I said, Edward Norton would probably be my second pick, but definitely it's all J.K. Simmons for this category. And now for the last category of the second installment, and that is going to be for Best Director. The nominees are Alejandro González Iñárritu for Birdman. I'm Mexican, so I can actually pronounce that. Richard Linklater for Boyhood, Wes Anderson for The Grand Budapest Hotel, Morten Tyldum, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, for The Imitation Game, and Bennett Miller for Foxcatcher. Now, this one is slightly difficult, even though it's kind of easy to kind of categorize, because there's two nominees in here who are definitely up for grabs for the Best Director Oscar, and two that I honestly don't know why they got nominated. To be honest, to be personally honest, I don't know why they got nominated. I saw some better directing in certain movies this past year, and yet these two got nominated. I'm like, one is less sensical than the other, in fact. And then you got one that's kind of in between, who I would like to see win, but he's a bit of a long shot. That long shot is actually Wes Anderson, who I think is very deserving of his nomination because of his directing style, which is very, very unique. Over the years, it's gotten more and more unique, and it hasn't gotten any more unique than in Grand Budapest Hotel. And I certainly would love to see him win, but like I said, he's a bit of a long shot. The two who I don't get why they got nominated are Bennett Miller and Morten Tyldum. Now, Bennett Miller did manage to capture some really beautiful shots in Foxcatcher, especially some wide exterior shots, like the one where they're in this graveyard and in the property, in the Foxcatcher property, and Steve Carell and Channing Tatum are looking off into the distance, and everything looks foggy. That shot was rather beautiful, and there's many shots like that throughout the movie. But then there's others where I'm like, just the pacing of this movie is just so slow that, sometimes it takes a while for me to actually appreciate those beautiful shots. But then Morten Tyldum with The Imitation Game, there was almost nothing really that flashy or unique about the directing style. It was actually pretty basic. It wasn't bad, but there was just nothing about it that really stood out to me. So when I read his name for Best Directing, I'm like, okay, there better be something in there that was very unique, and yet there was nothing. It was a very well-directed movie, but the direction wasn't anything very different from what I've seen not only in the past few years, but even this year with the other two nominees that are definitely deserving of Best Director, both of them. And that's Iñárritu for Birdman, who did the whole movie to make it look like one long take, and Richard Linklater, who shot the movie over 12 years. My pick would have to go with Iñárritu because I'm a huge fan of long takes. But what I loved about the movie is that it used two particular versions, or at least what I like to consider, two versions of long takes. One where the director gets to show off his camera work, his choreography, how well he can move the camera and make everything look like a dance, and make it look all breathtaking with the cinema, and work really well with the cinematographer to bring forward that very transcendent experience. And then there's the other long takes where the actors benefit from these long takes because they get to show off their chops. You can see all actors interacting with all of them. There's no cuts from back and forth. You don't miss out on anybody's face, and they get to show off how well they can memorize their lines and deliver them with power, essentially. And Emma Stone, Edward Norton, Michael Keaton, they all got to do that. They all had their scenes where they got to shine. So that's why I have to go with Iñárritu for Birdman. However, my second pick, my second runner-up, who will more than likely be taking home the Oscar, he's the Oscar pick, is Richard Linklater for Boyhood. Because if you are able to keep the same cast who are out of contract, especially that kid who could have easily backed out at any point during those 12 years or could have demanded like $1 billion to continue making the movie, and you still manage to keep them around, then there's definitely some kind of likability to you that makes you worthy of a Best Director, not just a Best Director nomination, but a Best Director Oscar. Because if you're able to keep all those people around for that amount of time and want them to work with you, then you did your job right. So my second pick, as well as the Oscar pick, would go with Richard Linklater for Birdman, because he's very much deserving of the Academy Award. And that does it for part 2 of my picks and predictions for the Academy Awards 2015. So let me know what you guys thought. Who do you think is going to win in these particular categories? And I'll see you guys next week with my final installment of my picks and predictions before the Academy Awards on Sunday, February 22nd. I'll see you guys then.